Let's jump right into this explainer. We're looking at how Muhammad Ali didn't just master the sport of boxing, he literally rewrote every single rule of his era.
It's wild to think about. How did doing absolutely everything wrong somehow make him the greatest? We're going to see how intentionally breaking all these technical and societal norms transformed him from an Olympic gold medalist who, insanely enough, couldn't even get served in a downtown restaurant into a transcendent global icon.
All right, so starting off, defying the textbook, the unorthodox heavyweight. When Cassius Clay first turned pro, the older generation of sports writers and trainers, they thought he did absolutely everything fundamentally wrong. Think about traditional heavyweights back then. They were expected to be these slow, flat-footed, humble brawlers who kept their hands glued to their faces. But Ali? No way. He was as fast as a lightweight. He danced around the ring, loudly bragged about his skills, and shockingly, he actually pulled back from punches with his hands completely down. He just relied on this otherworldly footwork and insane reflexes, making the so-called wrong way to box look incredibly right.
Which brings us to inventing the pre-fight spectacle, the Louisville Lick.
So this is where his out-of-ring defiance really kicks in. He completely shattered the unwritten rule that fighters were supposed to be quiet. Inspired by pro wrestlers like Gorgeous George, he realized early on that people would pay big money to see someone they were actually rooting against. So he adopted this loud, cocky heel persona. I mean, he was famously writing poetry and calling himself the greatest from day one, telling anyone who would listen, "I'm the greatest and I'm knocking out all bums."
But here's the crazy part. He actually backed it up. 13. By the time he fought Doug Jones, Ali had poetically predicted the exact round he would dispatch his opponent an astonishing 13 out of 14 times. It wasn't just talk anymore. To the public, it was starting to feel like literal prophecy. Next up, a name of his own, defying societal expectations. His defiance soon shifted from just the sports world to American society itself, and this happened right after he took on the seemingly invincible Godzilla of boxing, Sonny Liston. Overcoming massive 7-to-1 odds, Ali literally danced circles around the heavily favored Liston to win the title, screaming to the press, "I shook up the world, I shook up the world." And man, that massive victory, it gave him the ultimate platform to make his most controversial move yet. His public association with Malcolm X and his conversion to the Nation of Islam, where he officially changed his name to Muhammad Ali, deeply, deeply shook the sports media and mainstream America. At this point, he wasn't just an unorthodox boxer anymore. He was actively challenging the entire social order.
And the establishment's backlash was just massive. Major media outlets stubbornly refused to use his new name. They just kept calling him Cassius Clay. They labeled him a media pariah. Opponents attacked his patriotism, and boxing commissions threatened to strip his title entirely. Fighters like Floyd Patterson and Ernie Terrell flat out refused to call him Ali. But you know what? That only fueled his fury in the ring. He ruthlessly punished them while literally demanding mid-fight, "What's my name?"
Moving on to the ultimate sacrifice, the draft refusal.
The defining moment of his defiance really arrived when the Vietnam War draft intensified. When his number was called, Ali famously refused military induction, citing his religious beliefs, stating simply, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong." His resistance echoed across the whole country. Almost overnight, he became a highly polarizing face of the counterculture, risking absolutely everything.
And the fallout was immediate, and it was severe. For refusing military induction, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. For standing on his religious grounds, he was slapped with a $10,000 fine. And for becoming that counterculture voice, the boxing commissions acted as judge and executioner, stripping him of his heavyweight title. They took away everything he had earned in the ring. 3.5. That is how many years of his absolute athletic prime he lost. Just think about that. Suspended from boxing, forced out of the ring, while millions of young men watched him sacrifice his entire livelihood just to stand by his principles. But he didn't give up. For years, he mounted this relentless fight through the legal system. Following the initial bans in 1967, he fought his case all the way up the chain. Finally, in 1971, the U.S. Supreme Court completely reversed his conviction, exonerating him and setting the stage for what would be an unprecedented comeback. Which leads us to rewriting the playbook again, the Rumble in the Jungle. So, returning older, a bit slower, and having suffered brutal defeats to Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, the boxing establishment basically wrote Ali off as an aging has-been. The big question on everyone's mind was, how do you beat the unbeatable? Because waiting for him in the ring was George Foreman, widely considered the scariest, most unstoppable human monster in the sport's entire history.
I mean, look at these stats. Foreman was sitting on a 40-0 record with 37 knockouts. He was universally recognized as the fiercest puncher in history. He had just absolutely annihilated Frazier and Norton, the only two men to ever beat Ali, inside of 2 rounds, literally bouncing Frazier off the canvas 6 times. Heading into Zaire, everyone, and I mean even Ali's own team, was genuinely terrified for his life.
But here is Ali's absolute genius. He didn't try to outdance Foreman like he was 22 again. Instead, he defied common sense completely by inventing the rope-a-dope. This was a highly unorthodox, incredibly dangerous strategy of intentionally leaning back on the ropes to absorb an opponent's punches while protecting the head, explicitly designed to just drain their stamina. He essentially turned his aging body into a tactical trap. Defying the frantic, terrifying screams of his own corner to get off the ropes, Ali executed the trap perfectly. First, he leaned far back on the loose ropes, patiently soaking up Foreman's punishing bombs to the body. Then he mentally broke him, just whispering taunts right into the giant's ear. Finally, as Foreman completely emptied his gas tank, Ali sprang off the ropes and knocked him out in the 8th round to reclaim the title. Just incredible.
Ali didn't just win back his championship that night. He declared, "I told you today I'm still the greatest of all time." He proved that his ultimate weapon wasn't his youthful speed anymore, but his unshakable intellect and will to conquer the impossible by completely refusing to play by anyone else's rules.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. What untouchable rule in your own life is actually just waiting to be broken? If the greatest of all time achieved his iconic status by doing everything wrong according to the experts, well, maybe it's time we re-examine the textbook we've all been following.